Right, so let's wind the clock back to the early 90s. North London. We're in a quiet little flat on a street in Crouch End. Not exactly posh, but a decent area. Neighbours kept to themselves. Bit of a mix of people, really. And in one of those flats, you had a woman called Joy Gardner living with her 5-year-old son, Alex. Now, Joy was originally from Jamaica, born there and raised there. But like loads of other people at that time, she came over to the UK looking for a better life. She visited in 1987, then again in 1989 on a 6-month visa. She married a British bloke not long after. Seemed like her way of staying in the country properly. But unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. They split, and after that, things got messy with the immigration side of things. The Home Office basically said, right, your time's up, you're here illegally now. But the thing was, Joy wasn't some sort of threat to society. She wasn't hurting anyone. She was studying communications at the City of London Polytechnic. She had friends, a support network, a young son who'd only ever known Britain as home. She had family here too. Her mum, Myrna Simpson, had settled in the UK years before. She had cousins, a half-sister, uncles, a whole branch of her life built right here in Britain. Back in Jamaica, there was nothing for her. No family to fall back on, no safety net. Her solicitor, a man named Jamal Dervish, wrote to the Home Office asking them to let her stay on compassionate grounds. He said, look, the legal case might not be watertight, but come on, she's settled, she's got a kid, she's trying to build a future. He called her polite, pleasant and calm, and she never caused a fuss. Even her MP at the time, Bernie Grant, got involved. He'd spoken to Joy about her situation and believed she was a victim herself, not a danger. So yeah, she had a past, like most people, but nothing that should have led to what was coming. Joy wasn't aware she was about to be deported. She assumed her application to stay was still being looked at. Her solicitor hadn't even had a proper reply from the Home Office yet. No final answer, no phone call, nothing official. But behind the scenes, decisions had been made, and the Home Office didn't want her to know what was coming. In fact, it later came out that they deliberately delayed sending the rejection letters to her solicitor so she wouldn't have time to react, or worse, disappear. The 2 letters only arrived after everything had already happened. One said, you'll be departed shortly. The other, you're being deported now. But by the time the solicitor had opened that envelope, Joy was already on the floor of her flat, unconscious. Let's talk about what happened that morning. It was just after 7:30 in the morning on the 28th of July, 1993. Joy's at home with her little lad, probably just waking up, not expecting anything unusual. But then, there's a knock at the door. But it's not a neighbour or the postman. It's a team. 3 officers from something called the Alien Deportation Group, that's the ADG, plus 2 local police officers and an immigration official. 6 people standing outside her flat. Joy didn't let them in at first. Of course she didn't. They would have been bloody terrifying. So one of the officers jammed his foot into the door and used pliers to snap the chain lock open, and they pushed their way in. And what happens next is where things turn dark. Joy panicked. She shouted, she screamed. She'd rather die than go back to Jamaica. She took her top off. Some say it was out of fear. Others think it was to get attention. She tried to call her solicitor, but one of the officers unplugged her phone. Her 5-year-old son was present. One officer took him to another room to get him dressed, while Joy was being restrained. And when I say restrained, I don't mean by handcuffs. They came with some serious kit, handcuffs, belts, and something called an adhesive gag. Let that sink in for a second. They brought tape to gag her. Now, according to the official story, Joy was disruptive. She kicked off. She bit one of the local coppers on the arm. He had marks to prove it. Another officer managed to cuff her right wrist. Then one of the immigration officers shouted for them to beat her up. They all went down on the floor and restrained her. You got 2 local police officers pinning her legs, 1 immigration officer straddling her midsection, and another one sitting on her upper body. Joy's still resisting, still shouting. And then came the restraints. A body belt went round her waist. Her wrists got clipped into the belt. Then leather straps were wrapped round her thighs and ankles. Proper thick belts, not some flimsy thing. Still, she kept shouting. So the officer near her head pulled out this roll of wide elastic tape. The kind you'd probably see for injuries, only this wasn't for first aid. He wound it round her head several times to try to stop her moving, biting and speaking. Then he brought out a second roll and then wrapped it the other way around. And then he said, and this is his words, that he put the gag between her teeth and wrapped it 2 or 3 times around her chin. Apparently, even then, Joy was still trying to shout, still trying to breathe. He reckoned she was biting through the tape. But think about it. She's now on the floor, tied at the ankles, thighs, wrists, hands, strapped to her own waist, and her mouth sealed shut with tape. 13 feet of tape wrapped round her head 7 times. Then suddenly, something changed. One of the officers by her side noticed something was off. Joy stopped struggling. She went quiet. They checked for a pulse, and they couldn't find one. Now it's panic. They call in the others. They try CPR, but it's too late. It's now 8:04 a.m. They call an ambulance and say she collapsed. The paramedics show up 10 minutes later. Joy's got no heartbeat, no signs of life. The paramedics work on her diligently, and finally, at around 8:40 a.m, they manage to get her heartbeat going again. She's rushed straight to hospital and plugged into life support, but the damage was already done. The doctors told her mum, Myrna, that her brain had swelled up. She wasn't waking up. There was basically 0 chance that she'd recover. And then, 4 days later, on the 1st of August 1993, Joy Gardner was officially declared dead, just 30 years old. And here's where it gets all murky. The finger pointing started. The Home Office first said she died of kidney failure. They then changed their minds and said it was because of head injuries from the struggle. But multiple autopsies, including one done by her own mum's request, said the same thing. She died from a lack of oxygen, asphyxiation, because of the gag. Joy Gardner died on the 1st of August 1993. Straight after her death, the authorities went very quiet. The Home Office didn't say much at first, and what they did say kept changing. First it was kidney failure, then it was head injuries, but the autopsy reports, not just one, but several, all said the same thing. She'd been starved of oxygen.
People marched past Hornsey Police Station in North London today in an angry but non-violent protest at the death of Joy Gardner. Many in the crowd shouted murderers and a life for a life. Mrs. Gardner died last Sunday after struggling with detectives trying to deport her.
Both police and the organisers of this demonstration had called for restraint this afternoon, and the large crowd marching through the streets of Hornsey in North London in memory of Joy Gardner had taken heed of that message.
Who killed Joy Gardner?
Police killed Joy Gardner!
But there was no disguising the mood of the community following her death last Sunday.
The community is angry, but it is controlled anger. No one is getting out of control. Every people are shouting, and in that way we're releasing our anger at the situation.
The focus of the demonstration was Hornsey Police Station, where members of the Gardner family, including her young son, laid a wreath on the steps. Joy's mother speaking for them all.
Justice has to be done for the murderers that murder my daughter. Justice have to be done.
Ignoring calls from both police and organisers to move on, a small group of demonstrators remained outside the police station, making their feelings clear. The demonstrators who staged a sit-down protest outside Hornsey Police Station renewed their calls for a full public inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the death of Joy Gardner, a move that's so far been resisted by the Home Office. Peter Sharp, ITN in North London.
People were furious. Protests started up, campaigns. Joy's name was suddenly in the papers. Her MP, Bernie Grant, spoke out. Said she'd been treated like she didn't matter, like she was dangerous, when really she was just a vulnerable and frightened mother. The whole country started asking, why are immigration officers using this kind of force? Why did they feel the need to gag her? Why wasn't anyone held responsible? In 1995, 2 years after Joy died, 3 officers from the alien deportation group were charged with manslaughter. The trial was huge. People hoped it might finally mean some justice. But here's the thing, all 3 officers said they'd followed approved procedures, that the restraints, the gag, the body belt, it was all part of the training. And in 1995, they were all found not guilty. They walked free. No one was ever convicted over Joy's death. And the gag, the elastic bandage they used to tape her mouth shut, it was banned after Joy died. Not quietly. They made it official. Never again. But it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Joy Gardner's name became a symbol of how cruel the immigration system could be, of how someone asking to stay for compassion could end up dead on the floor of her own home. She wasn't a threat. She was a mother, a student. She had a life, and she died because of how the system handled her. Okay, thanks for listening, and thank you to my new subscribers. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Thanks.